Hey guys, welcome back to the Restorantine series where I interview members, community leaders, and friends of Restore. I started out today's conversation by asking myself this question: what other Jeremys do I know? And the first Jeremy that came to mind is Jeremy Jerschina. Jeremy is the executive director of New City Kids in Paterson, and he has an incredible ministry that I wanted you to hear more about. But not only do I want you to hear about how incredible his ministry is pre-COVID, I wanted you to find out some of the things that he's learning now, some of the ministries that they're doing, so that we can figure out how to come alongside him and how to pray for him in his ministry. So I was able to have that conversation. I hope you enjoy it. All right. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going, Jeremy?
Good. You know why I called you today?
Yeah. Let's get into it.
Well, I wanted to tell you, I only called you because I needed to talk to another Jeremy.
Oh, well, I mean, that's a good reason as any. I don't have a lot of Jeremys in my phone, but occasionally when I text them, I get kind of a unique pleasure in that.
Well, you may have gotten some butt dials from my wife because she's told me before that she'll, say to her phone, like, call Jeremy. And she asked me she's like, who's Jeremy Jerschina? I keep calling him.
That actually makes some sense. There's what zip code? What kind of what area code does she have?
It's 518. It's from Schenectady, New York. So it's like an upstate New York phone number.
I've gotten like random calls occasionally. I'm like, this seems like a telemarketer, and I usually pick up those calls, but occasionally when it's at a weird time, I'm just like, I no.
Yeah.
Well, my kind of, if you hear screaming in the background, it may be my children. One of them is potty training. Oh, whoops. But so Siri, when I say, my wife's name is Gracie, and so when I say text Gracie, it sometimes hears text Chrissy, and her sister's name is Chrissy. And so I've occasionally said like, hey, coming home soon, love you, honey. And, I get a text from my wife's sister saying, so excited to see you, but I don't think this is for me.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. So why don't you start for people watching who don't know you or don't know what you do, or they don't, now they know that you have a couple children. Why don't you just, why don't you share with us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah. So in terms of like our family, my wife and I, my wife Gracie and I have two kids, actually, with the third one on the way in the next 10 days or so. We got a due date of May 15th for our third daughter. We'll have a girl that's 3 years old, 2 years old, and a newborn all in the same time. So that's going to be exciting and harrowing and all that good stuff all combined together. And we, for the past now 9 years, we've been serving with New City Kids. I'm serving as the executive director of the Paterson ministry of New City Kids, and so planted that ministry in Paterson in 2015, and then have been part of the team that's been growing it and building it to enable our ability to serve and walk alongside kids, teenagers, and their families during their developmental years as a spiritual support, doing discipleship and a lot of leadership and academic development with some great musical development thrown in there as well.
Yeah, what are some of the programs that you run? I know music is a big part of it. But we're talking pre-COVID-19, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so before all this craziness happened, kind of when people think of New City Kids, the thing that they think about kind of most forward in their mind is probably an after-school center. And that's definitely true. New City Kids runs after-school programs. Paterson is one of 5 sites where we were, until mid-March, running after-school programming across different cities and urban centers. And we provide kind of the thing a lot of after schools programs offer is a safe place for kids. And we did it in, I think, a unique way. We're offering a mixture of academic, music, and spiritual development opportunities for children. But the way in which New City Kids does that is really unique. we hire high school students from the same neighborhoods where we're running those after school programs and hire them as part of intensive paid internships, um, where they're working as the teachers, the music instructors, the summer camp counselors in those centers. And that platform becomes a platform for their own academic, leadership, musical, and spiritual development. And so that's kind of what our normal programs look like. The mission behind that is about creating transformation. And it turns out you know, when you look beyond yourself as more than just a recipient of a program, but you become an agent, and that kind of agency is restored, the autonomy is restored, and you have guidance to do that. That becomes really powerful in how you change the way you view yourself. And so that's kind of what a lot of our programs are predicated off of, this idea that transformation happens when you're asked to be a meaningful part of something and not just receive something. And so we invite our teens to do that. We pay them, and they'd run these after school programs. And kind of pre-COVID, we had after school centers employing over 150 youth across the entire organization, running after school centers for over 350 neighborhood kids across our different sites.
So that must have been pretty big disruption then when COVID comes to town, and all of a sudden there's this, the change. I mean, how did it impact your community, your ministry?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if schools are meeting after schools, or after school programs aren't meeting either. And so, I'd say initially the first few days we kind of saw some sort of disruption coming. I think like the rest of the world, we're kind of going in between, hey, this will be like a few weeks to, maybe this could be a longer term thing. So the first few days we just kind of, found like, oh, this is some cool time to do some planning for when we get back, and, kind of plug into our regular programming. But by the end of that first week, it became pretty clear to us that although there wasn't kind of commitment from a government level on when we'd be opening up, that we were needing to develop that the mission of New City Kids wasn't changed by this. Our programming structure might be changed, and we retooled pretty quickly. By the beginning of the next week, we had moved all of our support to be remote, which is has been pretty common and consistent across a lot of the ministry and nonprofit world. But I mean, what I think some of those like larger reflections for our team about the kind of the difference between our mission and our programming, I think became really significant there. Our mission isn't to run after school programs. It's after school programs are an outflow of the mission of wanting to be a support to children and teenagers. And teaching in-person music instruments is a way of kind of empowering youth to take ownership and agency and develop skills that they feel proud of. And so many of those things, because our programming is relationally based, it's one of our core values as a ministry is relationally based programming. It was pretty easy to continue and sustain the relationships. We're not just providing abstracted services that, when those are disrupted, that was in and of itself the thing that was happening. Or, call it our services, the programs that we do look to facilitate and deepen relationships in different ways. And so all that said, I mean, we've been able to continue providing really meaningful support in three areas. One has been, and actually this has been an area that was able to grow in some ways because of the way in which we responded to the crisis, has been touch points with family units. During the course of our normal after school programming, there's some parents that connect very naturally with our team, and we pursue families to invite them into relationship with us, especially the families of after school center kids. But others are more closed off, and it's, we work to help change their perspective of this is a place for my kids to this is a place for my family. And some folks really buy into that really quickly, and others are more skeptical or reluctant. And we've committed since late March, we've had at least one touch point with every single family in our center every single week. And so I'm reaching out by phone, by text, through some of our platforms to provide encouragement and prayer to families. It's been surprising how some of the families that may have been more reluctant to engage with us during the regular course of school have now become open to connecting with our staff. And one of my team members jokes around that, once they get you on the phone, they don't want to let you go because folks are looking to talk with someone. and to get some perspective or help, or just someone to share a burden with that they're not really sure, how else to get out. And so our staff have been able to provide some really meaningful support to families, and some of that has been material support, through connecting folks to food resources, and in some cases cash assistance, through a foundation that we're partnered with. Really cool campaign that we were able to be a part of. And in other cases, just giving some, like, how do you survive in a household with a bunch of kids who are driving you nuts, which is advice that I could use sometimes. And
Yeah.
just so happens that the person they had on the other side of the phone, he and his wife had homeschooled their kids all throughout their lives, and so he was actually in a pretty good space to provide some context for some of the challenges that the parents were going with. So one has been the family connections. Two has been continuing to be a source of encouragement and joy for the children that are used to coming to after school center. And one thing that's stuck out to me is how severe of a disruption this is to kids. Kids feel things way more intensely than we do. Even for those of us that are maybe intense feelers, everything is ultimate. When your first grade girlfriend or whatever says no, your heart is broken forever. It's not like it'll be better next week. And so when school's canceled, it's the end of the world. When you don't get to see your friends, the kids kind of see things and feel things a lot more ultimately. And so New City Kids, we've wanted to be a place of stability and joy, and reminding kids that although it seems like everything's been turned upside down, they're still a part of a community that loves Jesus, that loves them, that wants them to continue growing, and encouraging them to have joy in the everyday. And so, from doing online tutoring sessions, to recording things in it that might have been part of their regular after school center week, like our worship community time or games, different songs that we had the kids do. We've recorded a number of those and sent them out to families and kids, and had some interactive challenges. There's been a number of cool things ways in which we've been able to stay connected with kids. Obviously not the same as during the school year, and probably that area has been the one that has been most meaningfully disrupted by this. But the third is the connection points with our teenagers, and that I think has been the most consistent area of support. It is kind of the core of New City Kids. Our biggest impacts are really how young people are empowered, employed, and kind of deployed to support their own neighborhoods and respond to some of the biggest challenges and opportunities right where they live. And so that was a lot easier to move online. I mean, we've continued doing mentoring and Bible study, and increase the pace of Bible study. Our teens have been asking for ways of engaging with the Word in ways that our regular programming maybe doesn't allow as much, because we have such an intense, like, daily schedule for them. We've dropped off laptops and instruments, and so there's music lessons ongoing. Students are continuing to make progress towards college in their education, and we've been able to have a lot of fun together as well. From there's all these digital services that let you do, like, watch parties together or play games online as a group, and providing continuity there has been important. But also, together with that, the kind of purpose and meaning of looking outside of yourself and to serve others. We've continued, and we've been committed to providing our teenagers meaningful employment during this period. And that's been for some of them, that's been really big, as some of them will contribute to their family budgets. And so being able to provide meaningful work for our high school students during this time has been important. And some of that work has been crafting ways of supporting one another, supporting kids, projects that they could send over to the kids, and kind of both leadership development kinds of activities, as well as more outward facing. We're going to send these to the after school center kids as part of their weekly worship video. So definitely had a lot of encouragement from our teen staff, and some new ways that they've been able to grow and kind of look outside of themselves in this season that have been really, really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I love everything you said. I was hearing so many opportunities
Yeah.
that you've seen. You know, you really, you know, it seems like you sort of, you know, the challenges are there, but almost immediately you guys begin to see, I mean, just the opportunity to, instead of having kids come into your space, now you're actively going into their space and being able to engage with their families. Um, that's amazing, man. That's really good to hear. So you mentioned a couple of like 3 or 4 different resources that you've had. You mentioned something about cash support, food pantries. You mentioned that you guys have been giving, you know, laptops or loaning laptops, musical instruments. I mean, what are some ways we can help you in that stuff? You know, how can we connect people, our churches, our church members, to those resources to help as you're distributing them?
Yeah, one of the challenges for us as a ministry has been, thinking through like what are meaningful ways in which we can invite others to do some of this work with us. And I think there's been a lot of caution both on our part as well as of some of our um, some of the guidance that we've been getting in around engaging volunteers during this season. So definitely some meaningful challenges there. I think we've been really blessed by folks who have continued to pray for us, or even share like, hey, like I'm aware of this resource that your families might be able to benefit from. There's someone who got a bunch of the main kind of food assistance that we've been able to provide families have come through someone sharing a resource that they heard of us, and just honestly sharing information and saying, hey, I don't know if you're aware of this, but my church is partnered with a food bank that's distributing food, and we could drop this off to some of the families in kind of like a distribution point. Or that's been really powerful. You know some of the other things, like as we've distributed laptops to help kids in support their ongoing kind of remote schooling, and musical instruments have been a matter of us just dropping things off. And um, we've also been putting together some care packages for some of our students during this time, which have been neat, and have had some folks that have been pitching in to put those together. Obviously there's like some concerns about how do you do that well, and so we've kind of just created a choke point that, hey, our staff is going to put those together, but these are the things that we're whether it's through like an Amazon wish list, or folks like purchasing the products and dropping them off. There's been a mixture of things like that as well that I think have benefited our families considerably. Um, the cash assistance is a really cool story. One of our foundation partners, we were just kind of a relational facilitator and administrator for this. Reached out to
Mhm.
us. They have a bunch of groups that are part of this larger cohort of groups that they support, and said, hey, one of the things that we're doing to respond to COVID is we want to make dollars available for direct cash grants to families that have been especially hard hit by COVID. And so they said, here's 150 codes, and here's the criteria. We want these to go to families who have been you know uniquely hit by COVID, whose lives have been meaningfully disrupted, who fall in within such and such income guidelines, and they have to have a bank account. And so we kind of went through and shared that opportunity with our families and vetted them. And at the end of the day, we're able to distribute codes that those families were then able to kind of, through those codes, are able to retrieve $500 of cash assistance per family for 150 families
Hmm.
across all of New City Kids. And so through that partnership, we were able to redistribute $75,000 to families in our neighborhoods that some of whom were in really tight spots, whether it's because they had challenges accessing the federal assistance, or they were just kind of unforeseen needs that had come up despite that. So
Hmm.
I mean, definitely seen like God provide resources in some really surprising ways, and really really cool ones to the families that we're able to serve with.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that really, to hear about that kind of impact and to be a part of it, is just, it's an incredible story. I know people are going to love to hear that and to hear how you guys were able to just, you're right in the heart of an area that has a lot of need that, I think a lot of people watching this don't see. on a daily basis the way that you have?
Yeah, I think there's such a broad spectrum in how this affects and impacts, the families that are in our neighborhoods and our communities. I mean, there's we've had, families who have been really really directly hit by loss, and obviously that's been especially tragic to walk alongside families that have experienced that kind of very very personal specific trauma, and to just like the broader, like, hey, this is really depressing, and um, this feels really bleak and unending, and that kind of like collective, weight that I think comes out of seasons like this is really heavy as well. And there's kind of everything in between. From I shared with you, some of the families that we call up, or some of the teens as we're talking to them on a weekly basis, are just sharing the kind of things that are a factor no matter what. Like, hey, I'm teenager stuff. Like, I'm really bored and I'm trying not to like beat up, my siblings, or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be, to, some of those more acute, um, you know, more like, challenging circumstances that, in some cases, we're able to be there and respond to those. And in other cases, we just need to, hey, so here's some other resources that might be able to be a support to you as well. And there's been a pretty broad spectrum of those.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, how can we, as we kind of close, what are some things? Obviously, we need to pray for you and your wife. There's another baby on the way. What are some other things we can, we got, obviously you've shared plenty of things we can pray about with the ministry. Anything else specific that we can pray for?
Yeah, we invited a few of our high school students to an all staff call that we had two weeks ago or so, and each of them, got like 15, 16, 17-year-old girls that got to speak to a whole bunch of adults about their experience and kind of be the definitive word on what they're, what they're facing and what they're encouraged by or challenged by. And um, as each of them concluded, we asked them, is there anything that our staff needs to know during this season about what your experience is, or about the experience of young people during this time? And each one of them, shared both about, kind of the way in which they've been themselves able to be empowered to kind of be there for other people, and how they've really appreciated being able to do that, and share what their support they're receiving and give it to others. Um, but the thing that was heaviest on their hearts collectively and individually was just um, the deep sense of grief and loss that has pervaded all of our worlds. Paterson, I'm sure North Haledon, like
Hmm.
everywhere. There's just this huge feeling of loss that is, you know in some cases more acute, in some places more low grade and kind of persistent. But the mental health concerns that they shared for their peers, for students that maybe weren't involved in New City Kids programs, or people that were sort of looked to them as confidants and shared their own things. I think there's some huge things that are just beneath the surface for so many of us, whether it's folks in our local congregations, to the families in Paterson that there's kind of dealing with that kind of additional strain of grief and aggravation to so many, like the mental health just concerns that folks have in general. And so I'd say that would be a huge area of prayer that those young women directed our team to, and I'd share, um, as a point of prayer, that underneath all these acute needs, there's also this kind of deep sense of loss that so many of us are experiencing and feeling, from more specific things to just more general, like, gosh, when is this ever going to end, and will life look normal again?
Hmm. Well, we'll definitely be praying for that. And I think that's a good word. You're right. The persistent grief, persistent sense of loss, and just the uncertainty. Um, we'll definitely we'll definitely pray for that, and we'll pray for all those other needs as well. And thanks for taking some time today. Pay attention to your wife. She probably needs you now more than most others.
That's probably true.
Yeah, yeah.
I've tried to be sensitive to when the kids just need to sit on my lap during a video call, because it's not always a convenient time for them to do that. But yeah, it's there's a dance, and yeah, we're doing okay so far. I wonder what it's going to be like when there's a actual baby in the picture.
Yeah. Well, it'll be it's an interesting world for you. So well, hey, thanks again, man, and have a great day. Say hi to your wife and enjoy your kids.
Thank you, Jeremy, and let your wife know if she calls me again. At least I'll know why she's calling.
All right, I'll let her know. All right, thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Well, that's all I have for you today. If you want to learn more about New City Kids, follow the link that's in the description of this post. And if you're enjoying these videos, feel free to share them on Facebook, like it on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And, this conversation with Jeremy today actually came up because someone suggested I talk to him, and I was so appreciative they did that. So if there's someone that you want me to talk to, please let me know, and I'd be happy to set up a conversation. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you soon.